Oh, okay. So where do we want to start here? This is exactly what we need, folks. Another example of racialization and the problem of writing black characters. How do you do this? How do you do this? BBC exec says Idris Elba's Luther isn't black enough to be real. BBC's diversity chief, I bet he's a liberal, says Idris Elba's Luther isn't authentic enough to be real because he doesn't have any black friends. He doesn't eat any Caribbean food. Fans are reacting to what they called a racist stereotype of black characters. I am shocked, not shocked by this because, well, we have this problem. It's ongoing, folks. It's ongoing. What is an authentic black experience, and how do you capture that on screen in your storytelling? If you've seen my previous video, then you know that I have a problem with racialization. I have a problem with identifying black characters by their race and applying traits to that race. And my preferred approach is more nuanced, and that's hard. Nuance is hard these days. So how do you do it? You know, I've been reading the comments, and there are pros and cons as to what this means. Yeah, there are lots of pros and cons I've seen regarding what it means to be an authentic black character, but also it's important to know that not even black people agree on this for reasons that should make sense, in that black people are not a monolith. We are not culturally, ethnically, spiritually, linguistically, or personality monolithic. So we have different feelings about this. There are some black people who are okay with generic characters. In the case of Luther, Okay, and we're back. So there are different sides of this. There are some black people who are okay with generic characters. There are others who want the character to reflect what they believe is an authentic black experience, which is hard to grasp because, as I've said, what determines how authentic a person's blackness is? Can it be argued there is such a thing as the black experience? Different black people have different experiences, cultures, language, eat different food, listen to different music. And this is a slippery slope to the path of offensiveness, quite frankly. But it's not. I to some extent, I'm going to try to apply some nuance to this, and I do understand maybe the point this diversity chief is pointing out. Superficially diverse is the phrase that Miranda Whalen has used. Superficially diverse, and I think I understand reading that article what she might have been saying. Superficially diverse here might mean that in the case of the character of Luther, he was probably written as a generic white character, and they decided to hire Idris Elba, who is black, in case you haven't figured it out, and decided not to adjust for him being black, which is often the Luther character is surrounded exclusively by white people. He doesn't, I guess, identify with what is perceived as the black British culture. In this case, black British culture is a mix of different black experiences, since the black British culture is the population of Britain. The black population is about 3%, and the majority of those, something like 60%, has black Caribbean background. So this has posed another problem because Elba is actually of, I think, Ghanaian and Senegalese heritage. So he is not Caribbean heritage. And her comment is that he doesn't eat Caribbean food, which is not the same as West African food, although there are some similarities. We both love fried plantains, for example. But That's how she perceives it. I'm not sure if the character of Luther is supposed to be Caribbean heritage. Again, I've only seen about 2 episodes of the show. I'm not sure if he's meant to be from the Caribbean, but it's obvious that this is the narrative that she is going with. I'll give her the benefit of the doubt that the character may be portrayed as having ambiguous Black heritage or be of Caribbean heritage. Nonetheless, one of the grievances was that he doesn't eat Caribbean food and doesn't associate with Black people. Let me say there are plenty of Black people who don't associate with Black people for various reasons. Various reasons, not necessarily malicious, just simply that maybe your we can hear that in the background, but maybe their positions in life and the circles they run with professionally, or circles that suit their interests, just simply don't have many Black people. I know, believe me, I know. So in terms of eating food from your respective culture, this is also a tricky one, because people who are first generation or second generation may not eat food from their parents or grandparents' culture necessarily. I know, speaking from personal example, that my diet consists of a mix of different foods. Mainly my Caribbean food is in the home, at least when I was growing up, because my parents are immigrants, and so they're cooking the food they know, and my dad does the same. And my dad infamously always say he doesn't buy Caribbean cuisine because he eats it at home. So, and in terms of the children of these people, these immigrants, we may or may not. We eat Caribbean food, but we are not loyal to it in the same way that our parents are. So chances are, I would say for my cuisine, I eat predominantly non-Caribbean food. Although it's important to know that lately, I've been trying to eat more Caribbean food. I've been trying to eat more Caribbean food for personal reasons, but I'm also not a good cook, so I'm more likely to buy it than I am to make it myself. But again, it's not an indicative of whether someone's authentically Black, how much Caribbean food they eat. But this brings me to a point I want to make about how do you capture that nuance without veering too far into, as she puts it, superficial diversity versus stereotypical diversity or stereotypical representation, because it is a balancing act. And I do understand the point maybe that she's making, that the character of Luther just was written as a white guy, and Idris Elba, who's not white, was cast, and they didn't make adjustments around that, if I can use that term. And I've seen, many Black people who are okay with this. They're okay with a Black person just playing a generic, non-racialized character. And I've seen other Black people who've said, but the character doesn't feel Black. The character doesn't feel like he represents the Black experience, the realistic Black experience. And so I've seen the debates on both sides, which is right, which isn't right. And I really feel that, at least for me personally as a writer, what I try to go for is nuance. One of the things I said in my previous video about Black racialization is that people of Caribbean and African heritage, I can mainly speak for Caribbean, we tend not to racialize ourselves. So we don't apply traits to ourselves based on race or skin color. Often our heritage comes through in terms of the food we eat and our dialect and the way we, interact with each other. It's not something that is necessarily racialized or subjected to stereotypes, although I can see it veering in that direction once in the wrong hands. So it's interesting. Like, one of the things being first generation that I can tell you is often your parents speak to you in, say, Jamaican patois, but you speak to them in standard English, and you can understand patois, but you can't speak it all that well. And these are the kind of balance, nuance ways that old culture interacts with new culture. that the children of immigrant kind of not navigate the world around them. They seamlessly move from one to the next. And again, I'm not familiar enough with Luther to know exactly what the character does and doesn't do. My understanding, based on what I've seen, is that he's just a generic detective in a detective show. So there's nothing about race that comes into play. And, some people are fine with that, but ways that you can do it authentically is perhaps to have the character once in a while drop in on people from his heritage. And I know that sounds weird, because even if as an adult and a professional he doesn't interact with too many Black people, my understanding is that the character is a loner. He likely grew up with some Black people. It's likely he had friends from school who were Black, or people he knew, his friends of the family who were Black. And it's okay to have the character drop in on those people once in a while, and maybe stop in to a Caribbean or African restaurant once in a while, and kind of indulge in the food, but not in a way that's chiding, because often this sort of stuff is portrayed in American television, where a Black character is accused of being whitewashed, and that character goes back to the neighborhood and where he grew up, and the character is then lambasted and chided angrily for turning his back on his culture, for being whitewashed, and for not caring anymore. So, but not in that regard, because I know personally with my Black friends, when I was growing up, like me, they were in the same position where they grew up with Caribbean food, but being like first generation, they mainly gravitated away from that. But once in a while, we'll get together and be at and go to a Caribbean eatery, and it's like, oh, we forgot what this tasted like. Oh yes, this food, I remember this now. And there's a lot of that, but it's usually in a kind of mellow sort of, humorous way. Not humorous, but it's like, yeah, I haven't tasted oxtail in a long time. This is so great. And this was the feeling I had a few years ago when I decided to start eating Caribbean food again, that I haven't had a lot of this in a while, ever since my mom passed. So it was a sense of, oh, I forgot what this tasted like. But this would be true to an authentic experience, to have this character maybe once in a while go to a Caribbean eatery, and once in a while check in with family that he knew growing up, people that he knew growing up, and touch base with that. It's okay, for example, to have a parent speak to him in a dialect and him respond back in standard English, because, as I said, this is very common between immigrant children and their parents. These are ways for that experience to come through without necessarily bordering on stereotypes. He doesn't have to eat Caribbean food all the time. He doesn't have to hang out with Black people all the time. A perfect example of how this was kind of shown is in Michaela Cowell's I May Destroy You, which I can't praise enough. Still one of the greatest shows in the last year that I've seen. That, to me, I watched that and felt represented as a woman of Caribbean heritage. Michaela Cole is Ghanaian, I believe, but there's so many similarities. I particularly gravitated to the scene when she was hanging out with Black Caribbean friends, and they were eating fried plantains, because fried plantains is one of those foods that Black Caribbean people and West African people have in common. We both love fried plantains, and jollof rice is not unlike a lot of Caribbean seasoned rice. So there are some similarities. And so when I saw that scene in I May Destroy You, I was like, yeah, I feel you. Here she is eating Caribbean food. And that's my approach as well. In one of my stories, my character, who recently, I guess it's art imitating life, lost a parent, and her parent used to cook Caribbean food for her. She kind of honors him. She herself is not a very good cook, but she honors him by eating at a Caribbean restaurant and eatery. And that to me is a representation of her culture. She enjoys doing that. And I remember when I was in school that a lot of my Black friends and I, there was a Caribbean eatery that opened up across the street and we couldn't get enough of it. We were there all the time. And but for us, it was another eating experience. You know, we also were obsessed with the local pizza joint. We were eating a lot of Asian cuisine as well. So there is no one type of food that we do eat. But again, it probably wouldn't hurt to have Luther visit a Caribbean eatery or catch up with some people that he knew from his culture and his heritage, whatever that is, because again, there's no clear I don't know for certain that the character of Luther is even supposed to be of Caribbean heritage. I know, again, Idris Elba is not of Caribbean heritage, but I'm not sure about the character himself. So even if it's not Caribbean heritage, he could still hang out there. He could still hang out at an African restaurant. And once in a while, just as a kind of means of saying, this is my culture, but it doesn't define me, because I think that would be true to the experiences of many first and second generation children of immigrants. We navigate two cultures. We move from one culture to the next, and it's relatively easy for us. We don't see a problem with it. We eat Caribbean foods at times, and sometimes we don't eat Caribbean food. Sometimes we prefer to eat other foods. Again, my dad doesn't buy Caribbean takeout because he eats that at home. So going back to, racialization, I think the solution here for me is nuance. It's not writing a generic character, but it's not writing a character whose race and ethnicity is their defining trait. It's kind of doing something in between, where the character, there's a story there, there's a plot, there's a personality, and these things are independent of race and ethnicity. And then in terms of cultural representation, again, have the character's culture come through interactions with people of that community, eating foods from that community. But you don't have to show the character eating Caribbean or African food all the time. Just sometimes, once in a while, because that's more authentic. Have that character, again, catch up with people that they know from the community and interact with those people. You can have him respond to, someone speaking to him in dialect. He doesn't have to respond in dialect, but he can respond, showing that he does understand the dialect, because again, many Caribbean people are like this. I am like this. I never speak in dialect because I'm not good at it, but I do understand it enough. And my parents speak in it. So it's like, yeah, that's kind of how you show it without necessarily just excluding or ignoring the fact that the person came from this community, or pretending that the person's experience is identical to that of a white British experience, whatever that even means. But yeah, I feel as if this is a topic that's going to keep coming back, how to accurately represent the Black experience, or in literature and in storytelling, without falling into the trap of stereotype, or without falling into the trap of color blindness or racial blindness, if that makes any sense. It's going to keep coming back, and I really can't stress enough nuance. Anyway, that is my opinion on this. Please let me know what you think. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, The Ebon's Gate, and until then, next time, folks.